Imagine marching into battle, not against bullets, not against an enemy army, but against an invisible killer living on your clothes. Throughout history, armies could survive battles and still lose thousands of soldiers to one terrifying disease. Its name was typhus. And in some of the darkest moments of European history, typhus killed more people than the weapons around them. Before antibiotics, before modern sanitation, and before scientists understood germs, crowded armies were perfect breeding grounds for disease. Soldiers slept shoulder to shoulder. They wore the same clothes for days or even weeks. They lived in freezing camps, filthy prisons, overcrowded ships, and war-torn cities. And where humans gathered under terrible conditions, typhus followed. But here's the frightening part. The disease wasn't usually spreading directly from one person to another. Something much smaller was responsible. Body lice. Body lice could live in clothing and feed on human blood. When an infected louse fed on someone carrying typhus bacteria, it could become part of the chain. Then the louse could move to another person. A scratch on the skin could allow infected material to enter the body. And suddenly, a battlefield could become a disease battlefield. The first symptoms often looked almost ordinary: fever, headache, extreme weakness. But then, things could turn terrifying. A rash could spread across the body. Confusion could appear. And in severe cases, the infection could damage multiple organs. One of the most devastating environments for typhus was war. During major conflicts in European history, soldiers and civilians were pushed into overcrowded conditions. Prisoners were packed together. Refugees traveled through devastated regions.
Food became scarce. Clean clothing became a luxury. And personal hygiene became almost impossible. Typhus didn't care who you were. Soldier, prisoner, civilian, rich or poor. If the conditions were right, the disease could spread. One of the most famous examples came during Napoleon's invasion of Russia in 1812. Napoleon entered Russia with a massive army, but the campaign became a catastrophe. Hunger, freezing temperatures, exhaustion, and disease devastated the troops. Typhus and other infections contributed to the enormous losses suffered during the campaign. The army that had marched into Russia with hundreds of thousands of men was eventually reduced to a fraction of its original strength. And this revealed something armies had been learning for centuries. Sometimes the deadliest enemy isn't the army standing in front of you. Sometimes it's the conditions around you. But typhus didn't disappear after Napoleon. During the First World War and the years that followed, enormous outbreaks occurred in parts of Europe. The situation became especially catastrophic during the Russian Civil War. Millions of people were affected, and typhus became one of the major public health disasters of the period. With war destroying infrastructure and millions of people displaced, the perfect conditions for lice and disease transmission returned. Once again, typhus followed the chaos. Then came a scientific breakthrough. Researchers discovered the connection between typhus and body lice. This changed everything. For the first time, controlling the disease wasn't simply about treating the sick. It was also about controlling the parasite. Clean clothing, better hygiene, delousing, improved living conditions, and eventually, antibiotics transformed the treatment of epidemic typhus, a disease that had once terrified armies became far more controllable. But here's the part many people forget. Typhus hasn't completely disappeared. In modern times, epidemic typhus is rare in places with good sanitation and access to healthcare. But outbreaks can still occur when people are forced into overcrowded conditions with limited access to hygiene. And that's what makes the history of typhus so important. It wasn't simply a disease of the past. It was a warning. A warning that when society collapses, when war destroys sanitation, when people are forced into overcrowded conditions, old diseases can return. For centuries, humans looked at battlefields and blamed weapons for the deaths around them. But typhus told a different story. Sometimes the greatest killer isn't visible. It doesn't carry a sword. It doesn't fire a gun. It can be smaller than your fingernail and still change the course of history. This was typhus, the killer that followed armies. And history may have defeated it, but it never forgot its warning.